Let me introduce you to our harness lines. We have 5 different models, 3 Vario harness lines and 3 fixed models. They all have been designed and developed for fitting the needs of windsurfers and different disciplines, so we will look at them in detail. Just 2 tips that I'd like to give you are that the longer the harness lines, the more control you will have, the shorter, the more power you will get from the rig. Another thing is that when you look at the distance that you have to maintain the straps, when you want them for light wind, you can go closer, so just like 10 centimeters apart from each other. That will allow the boom to be more free and the sail more free to rotate according to the wind direction, and therefore the performance will be bigger. But in stronger wind, when you want a bit more stability, you can go wider with the harness lines, so the straps are up to 25 to 30 centimeters apart, and that will give you more control and stability. So we have here the Vario harness lines for fin sailing for slalom. So if you're using a fin, you're slalom sailing and you want some Vario harness lines, these are the right ones, because they have more pressure on the strap when you're pulling and when you're releasing, and with a lot of pressure that you get from the fin when you're pushing on the board, it's very important that there is a bit of pressure so that you're not over pulling the rope, the webbing, or you're not like releasing too much at one point. You can actually adjust this while sailing by 1 centimeter each time, even when releasing. So these are actually very good for slalom sailing with any of the AC lines, so from the ACF to the AC1. These are the F1 Vario harness lines, which we recommend them for foil sailing especially, because compared to the slalom with the fin, on a foil you don't want to have too much pressure on the webbing, or in this case on the rope, when you're releasing or when you're pulling. It has to be super smooth. The reason is because when you're sailing on a foil, you're not putting that much pressure on the board as when you're slalom sailing. So if you have to move from your position to change the length of the harness lines, you might put extra pressure on the foil, which is what you don't want when you're foiling. You want that everything is as stable as possible. So by having a super smooth system, this allows you to keep your position, your stance, without putting any extra pressure on the foil, and therefore change the length of the harness lines to have the length that you need without changing the position and your extra pressure on the foil. Another version of the Vario harness lines, always for fin sailing, are the QR Vario harness lines. So they're exactly the same as our Vario harness lines, but with the extra option of the QR plug. The QR plug is used for safety. So when you're windsurfing and you get hooked under the sail, you're in a panic situation, you just take the QR plug and pull it out. This is very simple to do, and when to put them back in, you just have to overlap them and push them up this way, and then you just put the Velcro around it. One recommendation is that before you go sailing, you just make sure that the plug is fully up. It will not move when you're sailing. It's not going to move. But if you have it in the car or when you're transporting it, it's always better than before you go on the water that you actually have a second check. Then we go to the fixed harness lines. We have two of them. One is the normal fixed harness line, and the other one is the QR, again with the plugs. QR plugs are used again for safety, so when you just pull them out, you will be unhooking from any situation you're not comfortable in, and then they're just very simple to put back on, as I showed you just before. So just this way, you overlap them and you push them back up like this way, and then you just put the Velcro again around them. Another good thing about this is that you can take both of them out and you can just change the length of them in case you're using the fixed harness lines for all your family. Maybe your kids are using them as well in a shorter version, then you can just leave the clips in the booms and you can just change the length of the rope. I would recommend the QR, especially for freeriding. The fixed harness lines, like all the other harness lines, what is comfortable is just the system that you can take them in and out without having to open the boom at the end. So all the harness lines have the same system, which is very simple, and you just have to go around, as you can see on the single pages of the products, to close them on, and they're super stable. They're perfect for freestyling, perfect for wave sailing. We have them from size 22 to size 32. So we have wave and freestyle, free riding, slalom sailing for those who don't want the Vario harness lines, fixed harness lines for who's free riding and want to exchange the harness lines with members of their family, or if you have a windsurfing center. Then the Vario harness lines with the QR plug system for safety, which are good for slalom sailing. The F1 Vario harness lines for foiling. You can also use them for slalom sailing, but our advice is that if you're foiling, these are good, and so we recommend them more for foiling. And the normal Vario harness lines, which are good for slalom sailing on a fin. So there's a lot of options, and just choose the best one for yourself.